Well, let's shift from COVID derangement syndrome to climate derangement syndrome because I mean, I'm not surprised. I think we talked about it briefly. I know Alex and I have talked about it a lot about how climate change will be the new one. Let's lock down. Let's take these some authoritarian measures and deal with that crisis because it is out there as well in the eyes of these folks. And this is a climate scientist who's called for authoritarian power over democracy and rights. Um, the language that this person uses is really nuts. It's a new paper, basically in the client scientist is in Chile, and they claim that global warming, climate change, poses an even graver threat to public safety than COVID-19. This is Ross Midiga, which I may be mispronouncing. He calls for authoritarian environmentalism, basically. It is ultimately an empirical question whether authoritarian government is better able to realize desired environmental outcomes, and if so, why and to what extent. Yes, it is undeniable that nearly all wealthy democratic states have failed to respond adequately to the climate crisis. By contrast, various less affluent authoritarian regimes have been successful in implementing stringent climate policies. This is actually from the abstract, and it says, is authoritarian power ever legitimate? While under normal conditions, maintaining democracy and rights is typically compatible with guaranteeing safety in emergency situations, conflicts between these two aspects of legitimacy can and often do arise. Then it uses COVID as their example. That it says, but climate change poses an even graver threat to public safety. And I made a quote here. I pulled over a report. This is Mariana Mazzucato. She's a University College London economics professor. She basically got the ear of the United Nations. And she says that the near future, the world may need to resort to lockdowns again to tackle the climate emergency. Any surprise at all, Bob? Any surprise at all that this is where we're headed?
No. I always figured that COVID was the precursor to this. It is incredibly frightening that that calls for authoritarian power are out there, and people are probably really listening. Yeah, this is where it's heading. What I would like to hear from this individual is, what do they want to do? What specifically, what do you want to do? How are you going to stop the climate from warming up? Specifically, how is that going to affect the human race financially? Will they be able to get food? Will they be able to just get normal sustenance? Are we going to be broke? Explain what you want to do. That's what they never do. They never explain what they really want to do, because if they really did, people would run.
Yeah, let me give you an example of what she said. This was, again, she's the got ear of the United Nations. This is actually what she said, because she actually laid out some examples. This is what she said. Under a climate lockdown, governments would limit private vehicle use, ban consumption of red meat, impose extreme energy-saving measures, while fossil fuel companies would have to stop drilling. To avoid such a scenario, we must blah 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 overhaul economic structures and do capitalism differently, basically.
All right. Well, all right. So she did. She. Right? You said she.
This is. Let me get her name again. Make sure I got this. Mariana, and it's Mazzucato. I don't know exactly if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Well, or not, at least she's reasonably honest. She doesn't really spell out what it's going to cost.
But she's echoing stuff that's been proposed. Like California has attacked cows and the dairy industry to reduce that. And red meat is, because cows have a big footprint, methane gas. Obviously, the Green New Deal talked about limitations on. It wasn't affecting private airplane travel and vehicle travel, but for us private citizens, there was like major restrictions and plans of doing that kind of thing. Mysterious trains were going to pop up because we're all supposed to be able to ride trains, which currently don't exist. But yeah, some of them are going to be on it. And I think this is what we're going to see, because people like you are, ask the right question. Like, what do you want to do? Like, it's okay that you want to say all these things. Okay, well, why? What do you want to actually do? The reality is, you start telling people they can't have meat. you start to, and this is not, she's not the only one. Obviously, Bill Gates is on a huge, what is the thing he says about getting everyone onto like plant-based meat and not on actual meat? It's a huge movement in the Gates Foundation.
That's actually funny, because years ago when I used to hear all this scare talk about Bill Gates, I kind of shrugged it off and all that. But yeah, it's starting to, there's some fruition coming out, and he is as bad as people were saying years ago with climate and I think if you look up on Google and you just type in world's most famous infectious disease doctor or something like that, you would think Fauci would come up. Bill Gates comes up as the first choice. Yeah, so it's just
hey, my wife's there, man. She's way more anti-Gates than I am. I'm more of rich guy boredom, extreme narcissism, lives in this bubble, has nothing else to do, so they do these crazy things, and they just think that they know more than the rest of us. And he's just a extremely rich, famous version of a million of these leftists. That's it. That's how I look at it. Yeah. He's no different. He happens to be a very rich and famous version of them. Right. And if we took this Mariana Mazzucco lady and she had billions of dollars in her account, she would be somebody we talk about, at the George Soros level, where they're going around trying to get everyone to stop breeding cows and driving their cars.
But the problem with Gates is he has the ear of the World Health Organization,
everybody,
the UN,
rich and famous.
Yeah. So,
we have to take him serious now, right? He has to be moved into the George Soros category of activism, because they actually have fingers on the influence and the makers and policymakers, and we just can't. They may want to try to have a conspiracy theory all they want, but reality is that's the truth. You're absolutely right. They have the ear.
And Gates is he's salivating for the next
crisis,
next pandemic. Yeah, I mean, he wants to instill a lot of draconian policies into the human race. At least I believe he does.
Well, it sure has distracted from his Epstein ties, which I don't want to derail our conversation to that, but it sure is funny how we all associate with all of this, and all of his Epstein stuff just kind of got whooshed away.
Hey, we're News Talk with Brandon and Bob. We're here to tell you about some of the facts so you don't have to waste your time watching CNN.
We don't want you wasting any time with CNN.
Or Fox, or MSNBC, or some of these other guys that are making a whole lot of money.
Et cetera, et cetera.
It's not paying.